Hello everyone, welcome to Office 54. For today, we are going to talk about new AI model, safer action, and also easier agent building. So, quick recap. So, this release will expand model catalog and make everyday work AgenticFlow faster, cleaner, and easier to complete. We will introduce new 6 model of choice, Gemini 3.7 Flash, Grok 4.6, Muse Spark 1.2, Qwen 3.8 Max, DeepSeek B4 Pro 0813, and Qwen 3.8 27B. And we were talking about like the confirmation enhancement before taking dangerous action like delete, workflow, AI try, MCP server, workforce or connection. We also have the better display on tool availability or MCP. And we have the more reliable navigation across library, asset, and marketplace and onboarding. And we also have some other like enhancement in keyboard and assist technology across agent, workflow, and workforce. And have some other update on the label and action name as well. So these are the model. So we are adding it here. The model is currently available in the PixelML open router, where you can just go into the AgenticFlow and select the model. So you can click here. You go into the new agent and then just scroll down, click on the left hand side or PixelML, and then you can find out these model. Qwen 3.8, 27B, Qwen 3.8 Max, or you can have other like Gemini 3.7 Flash here with other model frontier, for example like Grok 4.6 from Elon Musk. We also introducing the other model. What else? Where's the Muse Spark? So we have Muse Spark from Facebook Meta by Mark Zuckerberg as well. So let me take a look on this one. So these are last week is kind of like very huge week in AI where there's a lot of model that's created, and the Gemini 3.7 Flash is released by model. This is best fit for high volume multi-model extraction, classification, and fast workflow step. The current artificial analysis of this model is running quite high. It was jumping from 3.6 by 52 point to 56 point on this one. So that is pretty impressive. So it is speed and price dependent on effort level and cache. For Grok 4.6, this one is actually a super model that released by Grok team, and is getting like the 61 point. So it was jumping from 56 to 61 point from the previous generation of the model, and only like substituting to Fable and also Storm 5.6. So this model is good for research, long-running coding, and also tasks where strong tool use matter. Muse Spark 1.2. So this is a new model that released by Meta. So this is also quite good. It can be used in repository work, visual to code tasks, and long horizon coding. Qwen is another model that generated by Alibaba, and it is actually kind of like one of the frontier model. I think let's go into here. You will see that Qwen 3.8 Max is getting around 58 point on this one. We also having the release of DeepSeek V4. So actually this is supposed to be a better model than Flash, but unfortunately, I think the reason right now is the model Flash is already very high point already. So when we are actually going to the leaderboard and the model intelligence, we can see that is only like 1 point higher than Flash. So people is calling like because of the DeepSeek V4 Pro 0813 is actually under training. So the model is not really catch up to the frontier, but it also still quite okay model to use. So the biggest model of this week, I believe, is going to be Qwen 3.8 27B. So this is not a really huge model like this one. So this one is like 2.4 trillion parameters. So this one is only around 27 billion. So it's like a bit 1% of the weight of the bigger model, but it still carry a lot of like weight that over around its weight. So if you go into the leaderboard and everything, you will have to see that Qwen 3.8 Flash is actually doing the, let me search for 27B. Yeah, so you can see here, Qwen 3.8 27B actually rank for 52 point, and this is the model that you can use in your machine, where you can actually take in the look into the market, and you see like there's some GPU, for example, like maybe you can buy uses GPU and you can host this model, and this is the first model that is on the local consumer that you can use that really be compete with bigger model. Even like is it better than DeepSeek Flash? So if you are into the local AI, I think you can either host this one Qwen 3.8 27B, or go into the DeepSeek B for Flash. And in case that you have that host, so actually you should definitely need to check out our connection, and you can go into the OpenAI compatible provider here, and you can add a compatible provider. So it means your local AI can actually help you to powering AgenticFlow as a platform. Okay, so you can also having this one. So this is actually doing the Pareto chart. So Qwen 3.8 27B is actually in a quarter of it all in a very high intelligence with very low parameter scale. So that's why this is release is very huge. I strongly suggest you pay attention to this one. And if you are really into investing in hardware, you would search for this one and looking for the hardware that can be used with that. Okay, so basically, Qwen 3.87B beat 4.6 Opus. So is it like a frontier like Outlook operation that could be? So basically, this model is kind of like frontier-like local option for its side. It can validate against your account. So this is the ranking that we have. We cook this one so that it give you a bit more. So for the Qwen 1 Max, actually it is a subsistence score on the Arena Code and Web Tab. Grok High is a bit below. Gemini 3.7 is actually a bit lower, but this model is important because it has the very high throughput. You can get it to like 300 token per second. It's equivalent to V4 Pro High, and for Muse is an underdog on this one. So for this one, I would like to cover a bit more on the Qwen 3.8 27B is that it is a quantized build from Qwen Max, and it's around like 17 to 19 gigabyte RAM. It can be run on 24 gigabyte of GPU or modern Apple Silicon. It is very good at its side, and it can be used. You can search for the quantization weight from Unslot or VRM or Echelon. It can be using and also powering this one. And I believe that you can, if you drop $2,000 on workstation, you can actually compete this one in the other. So one of the new things that we have this week is also have the DeepSeek Harness. DeepSeek Harness is actually a new developer review harness from DeepSeek. And this is quite interesting because it has a whole new methodology, and it's actually considering everything as a plugin. So we have some technical understanding on this one, and we were trying to learn on how they work and how we can improve the platform. So I believe that this one is quite useful. But for more to come, we will review our roadmap and see how we can learn from DeepSeek Harness on this part. So what PL are I trying at the moment? So for local coding, I believe that strongly everyone is going to talk about like Qwen 3.8 27B, especially with the 4-bit quantization or for 24 gigabyte class machine. For long horizon coding, Muse is quite good. For voice and parallel agent, it's going to be Grok and 4.6. And DeepSeek Harness that I think people in terms of this one. All right. So I think I will not going through this one. We'll cover a little bit more on like what we also include. So right now, when you are deleting this one, we are adding going to be confirmed. So it's going to clear confirmation step take place, and data set will be improved. So when you're choosing delete, open, expect confirmation, we also create a clear MCP connection guideline where you can actually see what is a server is ready to use, if a connection needs attention or is tool not currently available. AgenticFlow now will show a clearer guidance so that you can actually reconnect them before later use. For more predictable creation navigation, we also creating an update journey on the library, marketplace, welcome, dataset, and OpenAI compatible router. So right now we can actually having a smoother experience on this. We also creating additional like form and control, going to explain their purpose more clearly. So it means like it's going to be having some input and required field, workflow and agent schedule setting, workflow and agent variable, and also the API key creation. So all of this one is going to have a small dot in here. You can actually click on this one so that you can learn on what they are. And we also add in the documentation on this one as well. And we also have other like clearer sharing, publishing, and chart control, where you can have the platform specific name for each config type section. The template duplicate action now include the template name, agent version, and just history going to be easier to recognize. We also do update on some other like agent sharing action that work with both keyboard and noise input, with clearly identified messages and send control in agent chat. We also are updating the usable workforce publishing and template scrolling choice. We also adding some better keyboard and assisted technology support where we can have the broader use of agent and agent chat. So basically it's going to be make it the AgenticFlow is more easier to use. So that is the platform upgrade for this office hour. We also releasing the new 6 workflow blueprint that is going to including the translation quality check pack, add a sales CV invoice pack in order to extract from it, convert website knowledge base workflow, company docs QA, attendant analytic alert, or convert phase block production workflow. So for this one, it's very easy. Just click on this one to copy the prompt, and then you paste to any your agent of choice or Codex. They will use AgenticFlow CLI in order to build this workflow for you. Yep. So I think that's pretty much it for today. So thank you, everyone, and hopefully that you can have chance to review the new model and also experience platform. Anything, please send email to support@agenticflow.ai, and we're happy to help. Thanks. Bye bye.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the AgenticFlow channel. In this episode, we are using Claude Code together with the AgenticFlow AI to build CL to build a sales CSV invoice pack in just a couple of minutes. Let me set the scene. Almost every small sales operations lives a spreadsheet. Someone exports a CSV of customers, products, quantities, and unit price. And then somebody has to sit down and turn those rows into draft invoice totals line by line, customer by customer. It is tedious. It is easy to fat finger a multiplication, and it usually happens late on a Friday when attention is lowest. This blueprint takes that raw CSV and does the arithmetic and the grouping for you. So a human can review clean draft totals instead of building them from scratch. Are we with back here? You can see the prompt we are giving to Claude Code. Ask these AgenticFlow CLI to deploy the sales CSV invoice pack blueprint, and we handed a small CSV with 3-line items across 2 customers, FMICO with a workflow setup and some support hours, Archive and Brightline Inc. with a batch of training seats, Codex. Then we set the invoice policy in plain language, with Codex to calculate draft and invoice totals by customer. And this part matters. Do not claim the invoices were emailed, stored, paid, or approved. Well, it is drafting figures for a person to check, not touching any billing system. So we're back where we then ask it to deploy the workflow, run it once, and show us the draft invoice, the diaries, any validation issues, and the suggested next steps. When we run it, Claude Code reads the prompt, deploys the workflow on AgenticFlow, and runs it once. Let me walk through what comes back. A draft invoice summary grouped by customer. 2 with each line item multiplied out and totaled. So you can see it can setup plus support hours as one figure, 6 on base, and bright lines training seats as another 6. We're back with then a validation section that surfaces anything that looks off, glotosa, missing price, a zero quantity that does not reconcile X. Okay, and finally, a short list of next steps framed as recommendations for the person who owns building, not actions worth lurk took. Also notice the transformation here. Enter, you start with a flat CSV that means nothing until someone does the math. And you end with per customer draft totals plus a note of what to double check before anything gets sent. After that is exactly the boring, error-prone step you want a workflow to handle first. I'll be input you to use this yourself. You will free the first need the AgenticFlow CLI installed. Our earlier videos walk through the setup if you have not done it yet. Alpha Presidio, and while we are using Claude Code in this episode, the exact same prompt works in Ishi or other coding agents, so use whichever you prefer. With our briefly, one nice detail, the blueprint prioritizes AgenticFlow's blows built in Node, so it only consumes AgenticFlow credits when it runs. So back to the, and so one is finished, we can jump over to AgenticFlow and review the entire workflow visually, confirming every step was built correctly. Code series, you can see exactly how the CSV flows through each node, parsing, calculation, validation to produce the invoice pack. And here is why this matters at scale. Totaling one small CSV by hand is annoying but survivable. So with Veclo, but a workflow that reliably turns any customer product quantity price export into reviewed draft invoices means you can run it every day in hundreds of rows, and back with the same arithmetic and the same validation checks every time, and keep a human firmly in the approval seat where they belong. So I'm in Aberito, so I would really encourage you to try this with your own sales export. So with the adaptive swap in your CSV, tune the invoice policy to your terms, and watch the validation issues it catches before they reach a customer. On an RFI, so much for watching. If thank you found this helpful, please subscribe for more, and we will see you in the next one. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the AgenticFlow channel. So we are also in this episode we are using Claude Code together with the AgenticFlow CLI to build an attendance analytics alert in just a couple of minutes. So we are back with code. Let me set the scene. Attendance data is one of those things that only matters the moment it is missed. A single person late once is nothing. So we had but a no notice absence or two late arrivals in the same team in the same week. Fee is the kind of signal a manager genuinely wants to catch early before it becomes a pattern nobody flagged. The trouble is that the raw records are just lines of text names, departments, check-in time, statuses. So we are back with code and then eating them with the policy in your head every single day is the sort of judgment call that gets skipped when everyone is busy. So we are back with Codex. I'll see the blueprint applies the policy for you and raises the right alerts. Here you can see the prompt we are giving to Claude Codex. We ask the AgenticFlow CLI to deploy the attendance analytics alert blueprint. So we did, and we give it a day's worth of records, circa for people across engineering, across the design, sales and support with their statuses and check-in times. Then we spell out the attendance policy in plain language. We are back to late is anything after 9:30, and absence with no notice is critical and should alert the manager. And more than one late or absent record in a single department should be flagged for HR review. So we're back. We then ask it to deploy the workflow, run it once, and show us the manager alert message, the HR summary, and exception table, or and a follow-up checklist. I are back with Kundu. When we run it, Claude Code reads prompt, deploys the workflow on AgenticFlow, and runs it. Let me walk through what comes back. There first, a manager alert message written and ready to send that calls out the critical notice absence, because that is the one that needs a human today. Then an HR summary that steps back and reports the department level picture. Get back next, an exception table that lists exactly who tripped which rule, so nothing is buried in. And finally, a follow-up checklist is the concrete actions a manager should take in order. Notice the transformation here. If we at love, you start with 4 flat lines of attendance text and a policy living in someone's memory, and you end with a written alert, a structured summary, and a checklist of what to do about it. And backward, the judgment is encoded in the workflow, so it happens the same way every day instead of only when someone remembers to look. Alchemat, to use this yourself, you will first need the AgenticFlow CLI installed. Our earlier videos walk through the setup if you have not done it yet. We are back with Tlo, and while we are using Claude Code in this episode, the exact same prompt works in Ishi or other coding agents, so use whichever you prefer. If you've got the one nice detail, the blueprint prioritizes AgenticFlow's built-in nodes, so it only consumes AgenticFlow credits when it runs. And we are back with Larkutotu. Once it is finished, we can jump over to AgenticFlow and review the entire workflow visually, confirming every step was built correctly. To there, you can see exactly how the records flow through each node to parsing policy checks, alerting to produce the output. Come back, you said that you're here is why this matters at scale. Reading one day for one small team is easy. So with workflow, but a word applies the same rules to every department every day. Extracurricular absences and the HL absences and HR worthy patterns surface consistently, not just when a manager happens to be paying attention. Kakine Kure, it turns attendance from a thing you review into a thing that reviews itself and tells you when to step in. So would I would really encourage you to try this with your own records. We are back with code thatness swap in your team's data, tune the lay to the SLA's threshold and the escalation rules is to your policy and watch which exceptions it flags. And also, Bina too, thanks so much for watching. If you found this helpful, please subscribe for more and we will see you in the next one. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the AgenticFlow channel. So we are back with episode. We are Ishi together with the editor with the AgenticFlow CLI to build a company docs QA packet in just a couple of minutes. Let me set the scene. So every company accumulates internal documents and expense policy, a security review process. So backgate with tool, an onboarding checklist, and the questions people actually ask always sit across 2 or 3 of them at once. So what evidence do we need before a new vendor gets production access? Who signs off on an expense exception? We are the act with answers exist, but they are scattered, and the person asking usually just wants a straight reply with a pointer to where it came from. Tool. So we are back with Code. This blueprint reads the relevant excerpts and answers the question with citations instead of making someone hunt through the handbook. So here you can see prompt we're giving to Ishi. Back, we ask the AgenticFlow CLI to deploy the boy company docs pack blueprint, and we handed 3 short document sections, an expense policy with its airfare, hotel, deck. Are back with and meal limits, a security review section listing the evidence new vendors must provide, and an onboarding section. And back asu, then we ask a real cross-cutting question: what evidence do we need for giving a new vendor production access, and who approves expense exceptions? We're back with Code. We then ask it to deploy the workflow, run it once, and show us the direct answer, a citation table, a confidence level, any missing information, a question, and a suggested follow-up deck. We are back with Qwen. When we run it, Ishi reads the prompt, deploys the workflow on AgenticFlow and runs it once. Let me walk through what comes back. For a direct answer first, the vendor needs SOC2D DPA, a subprocess and SSO support, ACRE, and expense exceptions require manager approval, stated plainly the way you would want a colleague to answer. Back with Codex, then a citation table that each part of Maxer of the answer back to the exact section it came from, so it is verifiable rather than just plausible. A confidence next, a confidence level and honest know what information is missing or ambiguous. 6 FFF, and finally a suggested follow-up question to sharpen the request. 6 is that can notice the transformation here. We end to you start with a pile of policy excerpts and a question that spans them. Go back Codex A, and you end with a cited answer plus an explicit statement of what the documents do not cover. we're back. Code that citation table is the whole point. It is the difference between an answer you can act on and one you have to go re-verify yourself. So to use this yourself, you will first need the AgenticFlow CLI installed. Our earlier videos walk through the setup if you have not done it yet. In the tutorial, and while we're using Ishi in this episode, the exact same prompt works in Claude Code or other coding agents, so use whichever you prefer. It provides a one nice detail. The blueprint prioritizes AgenticFlow's who's built in nodes, so it only consumes AgenticFlow credits when it runs. A database initiation. Once it is finished, we can jump over AgenticFlow and review the entire workflow visually, confirming every step was built correctly. I Codex, and you can see exactly how the document sections flow through each node into the answer, the citations, and the confidence assessment. So then that I hear here is why this matters at scale. Answering one question against three excerpts is hand. So with that cool, but a workflow that turns any set of internal documents into cited entre with confidence scored answers means you can point it at your whole knowledge base and let people self-serve with every answer tied back to a source and every gap called out honestly, confident instead of a confident guess. I couldn't argue that is what makes an internal QA assistant safe to trust. So I would really encourage you to try this with your own documents. That's I would do drop in your real policies, ask the questions your team actually asks, and check how the citations line up. During our thanks so much for watching. If you found this helpful, please subscribe for more, and we will see you in the next one. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Agentic Flow channel. We are back. In this episode, we are using Claude Code together with the AgenticFlow CLI to build a phase blog production pack in just a couple of minutes. So we are back with Codex. Let me set the scene. Writing one good blog post is not really a writing problem. It is a production problem. So we are back with tour. Before a single sentence drafted, someone has to decide the angle, the audience, the keyword, the structure, the review criteria, and how it hands off to whoever publishes it. Skip that planning and you get a draft that reads fine but does not convert, not rank, and stalls in review for a week. We are back with Code. This blueprint front loads all of that thinking, turns a one paragraph brief into a phase by phase production packet you can actually hand to here you can see the prompt we are giving to Claude Code. Today we ask the AgenticFlow CLI to deploy the phase lock production pack blueprint, and we give it a compact brief. The topic is how AI workflow automation reduces manual operations work. The audience is operations leaders at B2B SaaS companies. The goal is qualified demo interest. The primary keyword is AI workflow automation. The tone is practical and executive friendly. Course and the target length is around 1200 words. So then we set the production rules in plain language. So we have build a phase-based packet and do not claim anything was published to a CMS, updated in Google Docs, delegated to another agent, or acted on externally. So isn't any the work, it is planning the work, not doing the publishing. We're back. We to then ask it to deploy the workflow, run it once, and show us the strategy summary, a phase table, the outline, a QA checklist, a CEO notes, some van, and the publishing handoff text. Now, when we run it, Claude Code reads the prompt, deploys the workflow code flow on AgenticFlow and runs it once. Let me walk through what comes back. So first, a strategy summary that pins down the angle and why it fits that operations buyer. Then a phase table that breaks the work into ordered stages so nobody has to guess what comes next. Next, a section outline you could hand straight to a writer, followed by a QA checklist to review the draft against. It other is an SEO notes tied to that primary keyword, and finally a publishing handoff that spells out what the publisher needs to ship it. So try notice the transformation here. Back with Code, you start with the single paragraph of intent, and you end with a structured production plan, strategy, phases, outline, review criteria. So cancels and handoff all pointed at the same goal. So I'm happy to the draft still gets written by a person, but they start from a plan instead of a blank page. Also, you have to use yourself, you will first need the AgenticFlow CLI installed. Our earlier videos walk through the setup if you have not done it yet. And while we're using Claude Code in this episode, the exact same prompt works in Ishi or other coding agents, so use whichever you prefer. Okay, serial. I one nice detail: the blueprint prioritizes AgenticFlow's built-in no nodes, so it only consumes AgenticFlow credits when it runs. It also once it is finished, we can jump over to AgenticFlow and review the entire workflow visually, confirming every step was built correctly. Also, back to you can see exactly how the brief flows through each node to produce the full production packet. Here is why this matters at scale. The pipeline planning one post by hand is fine. So at a workflow, but a workflow that turns any brief into the same structured packet means your whole content pipeline runs on a consistent process, same strategy discipline. This was with Sam Kim discipline, same clean handoff every single time. There is Siri Tempalev. That is how a small team pushes like a much larger one. So I would really encourage you to try this with your own brief index. So we bought intro the Siri topic, swap in your topic, audience, and keyword, and watch how the phase table and outline give you a running start. Backwards on the Shandis who watch. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this helpful, please subscribe for more, and we will see you in the next one. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the AgenticFlow channel. So we are back with Codex. In this episode, we are using Claude Code together with the AgenticFlow CLI to build a website knowledge base pack in just a couple of minutes. Let me set the scene. I'll say everyone want that's a chatbot or an assistant that can answer questions from their website. So we are banned, and the honest bottleneck is never the model, it is the preparation. With Codex, before anything can be retrieved, someone has to read the page, decide how to break it into meaningful chunks, write metadata, so and figure out which questions the content does not actually answer. Also, with that prep work is what makes retrieval good or useless, and it is exactly the step people skip because it is tedious. With code this blueprint, take XI URL and produces a UI ready outline you can build on instead of dumping raw text into a vector store and hoping. Back here you can see the prompt we are giving to Claude Code. We asked the AgenticFlow CLI to deploy the website knowledge base pack blueprint, and we pointed at a single source URL, the PixelML homepage, and then we set the knowledge base policy in plain language. Create a raw age ready outline with a source summary section, candidate 8 chunks, metadata, so suggestions, answered questions, and a QA checklist. So we are backwards here, and we are explicit about the boundaries. Do not claim it crawled beyond the supplied URL, wrote to a vector database, updated superbase. So we or took any external action. It is preparing the material, not indexing it. So we then ask it to deploy the workflow, run it once, and show us the source summary, the section outline, the candidate chunks with metadata suggestions, DCU, the unanswered questions, and the QA checklist. So again, when we run it, Claude Code read the prompt on, deploys the workflow on AgenticFlow on, and runs it once. Let me walk through what comes back. So we are back with first a source summary, a clean read of what the page actually covers, then a section outline that organizes the content logically. So we back to the next candidate chunks, the page broken into retrieval pieces, each with suggested metadata so a downstream system can filter and rank them. Where there a list of unanswered questions, the gaps where the page would leave a user stuck, and finally a QA checklist to validate the knowledge base before you trust it. And have the back and notice the transformation here. You start with a live web page and the vague intention to make it searchable, and you end with structured chunks, metadata, workand is and an honest list of what the content does not cover. Also, we are back. All right, those unanswered questions are quietly the most valuable output because they tell you where your knowledge base will fail before your users find out. RST, to use this yourself, you will first need the AgenticFlow CLI installed. Our earlier videos walk through the setup if you have not done it yet. So and while we are using Claude Code in this episode, so the exact same prompt works in Ishi or other coding agents. So use whichever you prefer. And the one nice detail, the blueprint prioritizes AgenticFlow's built-in nodes. So it only consumes AgenticFlow credits when it runs. Here also that too. Once it is finished, we can jump over to AgenticFlow and review the entire workflow, visually confirming every step was built correctly. So you can see exactly how the URL flows through each node to produce the knowledge base pack. Here is why this matters at scale. Preparing one page is a nice start. As we flow code turns any URL to consistent chunked metadata tags. Mature QA checked material means you can build the foundation for a whole retrieval system page by page with the same structure and the same quality checks every time in code do instead of a messy one off the end they having good retrieval starts with good preparation, and this is the preparation. So I would really encourage you to try this with your own site. And feed a I pointed it at a key page, review the candidate chunks and metadata, and pay close attention to the unanswered questions it surfaces. With theatre there. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this helpful, please subscribe for more, and we will see you in the next one. Thanks. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the AgenticFlow channel. In this episode, we are using Claude Code together with the AgenticFlow CLI to build a translation quality check pack in just a couple of minutes. So let me set the scene. Machine translation has gotten remarkably good, which is exactly why it is dangerous. We are back with Codex, a translation that smoothly can still quietly change the meaning, especially in a legal or contractual context. So we back with Coder, so shifted responsibility or a softened obligation can matter enormously. Codex, so the heart is not producing a translation, it is catching the places where the translation drifts from the source. And that usually needs a bilingual reviewer, and they are expensive and slow tool. So we are back with Codex, and this blueprint gives you a structured second opinion on a translation, comparing it against the original and telling you where to look. But here you can see the prompt we are giving to Claude Code. So now we ask the AgenticFlow CLI to deploy the translation quality check pack blueprint and we give it a Japanese sourced text, a clause about how a service provider handles customer data, retains audit logs for 90 days, and exports them on request along with a proposed English translation. We ask it to evaluate that translation rather than just retranslate it. So we then ask it to deploy the workflow, run it once, and show us the overall quality, meaning finding drift terminology issues. Buzz a suggested revision and reviewer note. Are back when we run it. Claude Code reads the prompt, deploys the workflow on AgenticFlow, and runs it once. Let me walk through what comes back. Next, first, an overall quality assessment, a plain read on whether this translation is trustworthy as is. Then the meaning drift findings. Codex, courses where the specific place where the English says something subtly different from the Japanese, which is exactly where risk hides in a contract. We are back with terminology issues, terms that should be consistent or more precise, followed by a suggested revision that tightens the wording. I would there, and finally reviewer notes that give a human the context to make the final call. So as a notice the transformation here. Or you start with two blocks of text in two languages and no easy way to know if they truly match. And you end with a structured critique that points straight at the risky spots. It does not replace a human reviewer. It makes that reviewer far faster. All right, at that 35, because they are checking flag findings instead of reading everything word by word. If we are about to use this yourself, you will first need the AgenticFlow ICL installed. Our earlier videos walk through the setup if you have not done it yet. With how and while we are using Claude Code in this episode, the exact same prompt works in Ishi or other coding agents, so use whichever you prefer. Opaki L, one nice detail, the blueprint prioritizes AgenticFlow's built-in node, so it only consumes AgenticFlow credits when it runs. Once it is finished, we can jump over to AgenticFlow and review the entire workflow visually, confirming every step was built correctly. You can see exactly how the source and translation flow through each node to produce the quality report. Here is why this matters at scale. In Claude, checking one clause is useful. So we are bet to know that's any source and workflow load into translation pair into the same structured quality report means you can run every contract save with the tree, every localized page, every important message through a consistent review lens, catching meaning drift before it ships in any language pair, without waiting on a scarce bilingual reviewer for the first pass. AI that occurs, I would really encourage you to try this with your own contexts and gags I drop in a source text and a translation you're unsure about. Watch the meaning drift findings it surfaces. Read the say and use the suggested revision as a starting point for your reviewer. And also that for thanks so much for watching. If you found this helpful, please subscribe for more and we will see you in the next one.